Our host, the world-renowned Christine Enville, an IFBB professional, 3 times world champion, a mentor, an icon, and of course, a founding co-owner of the best supplements money can buy, International Protein. In this podcast, we plug into Christine's experience and discuss how she would handle traveling to a comp. We discuss how to prepare yourself for long-haul flights and how to set up the perfect conditions when you land. So today, Christine, we want to talk about traveling and bodybuilding. So one of the main challenges to anyone's fitness goals is consistency, right? And when you travel, you're thrown out of your routine, and trying to get back on track is the tough part. Now, I think we've touched on this in other podcasts in the past, but I'd really like to know your tips on how to travel and actually bodybuild at the same time.
Cool. Well, actually, I'm going to talk about how to travel and bodybuild, but also how to travel for a bodybuilding competition.
Right.
Because that's something that hopefully people who are competing do actually aspire to compete, more than just at their local show, even if it's only traveling, within the country, but at least, in hopefully traveling internationally if they're successful enough. So firstly, to tackle the topic of, traveling, keeping your routine and still bodybuilding, I think the main thing, or my main tip there, is that you need to have a routine. So if you do have a consistent training program and a cardio regime that you do, it then means when you travel, you have to look at, can I do it at the same time? Or do I have to switch my times around, but I still, in essence, want to keep that same thing? So if you do cardio session and a weight training session, you may not be able to ideally do the cardio in the morning and the weights at afternoon like what you normally do. You may have to look at switching that around whilst you're away. So it's going to depend on so many things. Like it's going to depend on, are you away for a holiday? Are you away for work? Because if you're away for work, obviously you're, confined to certain times when you're going to be at either business meetings or a conference or whatever it is that you've traveled for. So my suggestion would be, and, thank goodness we're in the era of Google, wherever it is that you're traveling to, have a Google or check out where the gyms are in relation to where you're staying. And in this day and age, there's going to be something, and worst case scenario, the hotel that you're staying at, it's going to have something, which is better than nothing. So even if you can't ideally do your full routine, to me, that's not an excuse to just drop it completely. Like the idea is that you look at what you can do rather than what you can't do, and try to keep something that resembles a sort of a workout, so that when you get back to your normal routine and your normal life, you haven't totally just dropped a lot of fitness, because fitness does drop very quickly. One session off of legs, and the next session that you go back, it feels like you haven't trained them in 6 months, and the pain that you get afterwards. But I think the key things there are, you look, rather than looking, I can't train at the perfect time, or I can't do something at the time that I would like to. It's more like looking at the structure of your day and looking at what you normally do and try to fit those activities in. So it may mean that you have to do your weights and your cardio at the same session, or you have to do like a version of what you have been doing. But I guess the main thing is that something is better than nothing, and trying to keep some sort of semblance of a routine. So, for example, before COVID, I spent a lot of time traveling back and forth between the US and Australia, and my routine in Australia is one way because of how my day structure is, and my routine in America is almost like flipped around. So we'll be doing my cardio later, or I will do a different sequence of events, but I still fit everything in, and still basically have my same meal structure. It's just things are at different times. So that's the other part of it, is that the traveling and the food, and battling with what's available, and trying to stay on track with your diet and that type of thing.
Yeah, just adapting to what's available as, the resources around you. You might be in an area where it's just inappropriate to do certain things.
Well, that's where, again, depending on where you travel to, if you're traveling, anywhere within, even, within Australia, New Zealand, Asia, America, even Europe, there's going to be something that somewhat resembles what you normally have food-wise. But this is also, again, why you travel with protein powder, because if nothing else, you're going to be able to get good quality protein, because that's normally the hardest part of traveling, is that, you know, if you go to some places to get meat and again, China is probably a really good example when we've traveled there, because a lot of the food, the meat content at restaurants is very, very low. Like, it's very high vegetable content, and that's all well and good. But, you know, when you're trying to bodybuild, you want to have protein. So, you know, having access to protein powder or finding a Western restaurant where they're serving steak and things like that is, you know, your best options, but it isn't as easy as what it sounds. But if you're going to America, you know, you're going to have the opposite trouble. You're going to have like an abundance of food and trying to, I guess, not being tempted to go and eat 10 times what you need to eat just because they put it in front of you over there. So those are some of the challenges. But, you know, there's also the option of, you know, getting yourself a good set of resistance bands, you know, worst case scenario, or learning some more like plyometric exercises and bodyweight exercises and things that you can do just to keep yourself, you know, kind of, I guess, keep your body active and keep it moving, because I think...
So worst case scenario, you're doing something in the hotel room.
Yeah, because to do nothing is worse, and then, you know, just to kind of like totally throw that routine out the window, it's harder when you get back to then get back into that routine. So having, I guess, looking at what you do as like key components or key items that you do, like I do a cardio session, I do a weight session, and these are my 5 meals, and trying to keep yourself somewhat in that structure. So if, or adapting, like say, for example, you know, I think you mentioned, Ash, that you had to do like some boozy lunches and
dinners and all. It was sleep. Sleep gets me. So if I'm knackered, getting up next morning at 6 a.m, or I know that's probably late for you.
Yes.
when do you wake up? 3:45.
3:45. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not at that level. But for me, getting up at 6 and actually wanting to exercise after having to do dinners till midnight and a few drinks along the journey as a job, it really derailed me. So that's why I don't do it anymore.
Well, there you go. Well, that is also, I guess, another option, isn't it? Is to assess how does that fit into your lifestyle and find something that's more conducive to it. But say that is your lifestyle. Again, when you go out, you know, looking at menu options, there's always a salad. There's always a leaner option. Like you don't have to eat the fries just because they serve it with the meal. You know, you can always ask to substitute. You know, most places now do have, you know, fresher, lighter options. Definitely, you see that coming through into the hotels where they actually even promote that, the fact that they have a more corporate fit type of identity, and you can get leaner foods. It's not all the stodgy kind of food. So when you go out, it's smarter choices. So if you do have to eat out a lot, you know, if alcohol is involved, you know, I don't know much about alcohol at all because I don't really drink, but I do believe you can, like, you know, spritz things and maybe like every second drink's a non-alcoholic one, or ask for sort of more dilute things.
Lemon, lime and vodka, which is your go-to kind of very low, if not no calorie kind of option, I think.
Yeah, other than the alcohol. Yeah. Alcohol is always going to have calories, but but the lemon and the lime. So that's the thing. Don't go for the creamy cocktails, I guess, with all the cream and everything is the moral of that story, and the extra sugars. So there's always a smarter choice of anything if you have to, if you're in that situation where you need to eat like that and try to like fit in. And I've spent a lot of time, you know, going to those kind of, not maybe the kind that you go to, Ash, but still dinners with business partners and things where there is food and there is entertainment and you're expected to, you know, join in.
You spoke about China before. They're the worst because, of course, you know, you go, they feed you, you eat something, they fill up your plate, you're expected to eat it no matter what it is, you know, and it just gets worse and worse. And as the novelty white guy at the table, of course, what they're doing is they're challenging you to a drink. So, anyway.
Yeah.
It's a unhealthy lifestyle.
And speaking of China too, they do like to, I guess, you know, push you on those certain foods. But again, you know, I guess it's that thing where maybe I have the advantage of being the athlete or something where I can kind of push back a little bit and say, nah, not on my diet, you know, I'm not going to eat that, but I'll have that, because they do have this crazy chicken thing over there, which is like pickled chicken, which is like pure chicken breast, but it's cold and it looks like it's meant to be hot, but it's actually a cold chicken, and it's actually really, really good. Okay. So when that comes around, you kind of just have extra of that and build up the protein content there.
Well, I didn't have that advantage, and I'll go off track a little bit, but I was best man at a mate's wedding. He was Chinese, and I must have been, 23 at the time, and quite a wealthy family. So they had their weddings. They had, I think, 3 weddings in different cities.
Whoa.
And because they lived in New Zealand, but they had their parents in Qingdao and also in Tianjin. So anyway, I was over there, and of course there's 30 tables of families and everything, and I'm the novelty white guy. They've got these little, almost like a little 7-ounce kind of glass where they'd fill up Qingdao beer, which is really good beer, made by the Germans, German settlement once upon a time. But also then they poured the nastiest sort of cheap red wine they could possibly, because they don't really know wine that well. They're getting there, but in the past they didn't. And then it could also be Chinese sake. So you're expected to, I think it's called ganbei or something like that, which means bottoms up. My job was to earn my stripes. So that's the kind of treatment I get when I go over there. And I was just thinking the whole time, endurance. It was a hard run. But anyway, you get away with it. So let's get back to bodybuilding and
traveling. Yeah. So that's the thing. So if you do have a job that entails that, it is all about routine and just having that discipline to do something rather than nothing and to plan. Like a lot of it comes down to planning. Like, when I was prepping for competitions, I had to travel to New Zealand, of all places, Ash. And
lucky you.
I know. And, I would spend a week there at a time, visiting clients, and it would be a matter of, whatever I could possibly take that I was allowed to take that was, dry type of foods that I could keep on my diet, the protein powders and those type of things, rice cakes and whatever, and other things I would just try to source there. Obviously being New Zealand, very similar to Australia, not that difficult to find. And again, a lot of the hotels now, if you ask for certain food, they are generally able to make it. If they have chicken, even if it's skin, they can take the skin off and make it skinless for you and prep it like that. So it's just a matter of being, I guess, bold enough to ask, which that's something I've learned from the Americans. They will ask to have something exactly how they want it. And I know Australians, we tend to be a little more like, oh yes, whatever, we'll just give it to us however. We won't ask for what we actually want or what we actually need. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the time it is just asking for what it is that you want, but knowing what you need to have and preparing and planning ahead. That's when you're traveling, I guess that would be, during a prep time or just as part of your normal lifestyle. But a lot of the time in bodybuilding, you do a competition and, the number of times it's in your own hometown isn't that common. And especially as you get higher and higher up, you're going to be going to like world championships or at least national titles, professional shows, and it does require you to travel overseas and, or even, interstate. The first thing there is obviously, how far before the competition do you travel? If it's a local competition, then, if the show's on a Saturday, you're probably okay to arrive, on a Thursday. Maybe the Wednesdays, if you've got that luxury of being able to get away from work in time. Obviously, you need to be there in time to do your check-ins, weigh-ins, all that kind of stuff, get your tan done. So you need to allow that amount of time. When you're traveling overseas, if you have the luxury, I always like to arrive, the Sunday before or even the Saturday for a show the following Saturday, mostly because you are switching time zone and you do want to have like a whole week to train each body part in that new environment at least one time, before you're going in to compete. So there's number one is like the timing. Obviously that does get expensive with a week's worth of accommodation, time off work, all that kind of stuff. So that's best case scenario. Worst case scenario is, again, probably trying to arrive on like the Thursday. That is a little bit tougher because you don't have time to really train. You've already normally finished your training cycle by then. And the travel is over that period when you would normally be doing your last sessions and everything. So, think hard about that is it worth that extra little bit of money and time to just come in that full week earlier and really acclimatise yourself to the region, or whether or not you absolutely have to fly in, that close to the time. So that's number one.
If you're a professional athlete, you would because, every sports team does it.
Yes. But you would be surprised the number of athletes that I see that try to drop in at the last minute because they really want to spend almost like the least amount of time or the least amount of money. And to me, it's like you put so much effort and so much time and energy and money into getting to that point. Why would you compromise it at the end? But it's something that I do see time and time again where people think that, I'll be right, I'll just fly in on the Wednesday, compete on the Saturday, be out of there. But it doesn't bring the best out in you. So again, I would always like at least that week beforehand. Any longer than that, and it's like you have to kind of go through too much outside of your routine. So you don't really need to get in 2 weeks before or anything. A week's normally pretty good. When it comes to the actual flying, I've just got a few tips here. So in the old days, they used to let you take water on the plane. Right. They didn't have bans on how much you could take through, all that kind of thing. And I literally would just like try to take all my water for the flight, which is kind of ridiculous, but they did let me do it. Now, obviously, they give you a lot more water and there's a lot more access to water, even if it's not special water. But when you're flying and one of the things that bodybuilders worry about is the water retention. Anyone who's flown knows that there's often a great deal of water retention associated with flying. And I've seen people who've tried to only eat protein on a flight, thinking that carbs will blow them up and all these kind of things. And it's not that at all. It really just is your body responding to the pressure, and you can still eat your carbs, you can still eat protein. But one of the tricks is to just keep that water flushing through. So I would try to drink like at least half a litre every hour.
And also have an aisle seat.
Yes.
Because if you're at the window, you're going to piss someone off.
Yeah, well, see, but that's good though, because again, getting up and walking.
It's good for them too.
Every hour or something, because you need to go to the toilet.
Yeah.
Having that little walk on the plane is really good, rather than sitting in the one spot for 8 hours at a time or something. So it has a twofold effect, doesn't it? It keeps the water coming through, but it keeps you up and moving around that plane, so that the water isn't pooling in different areas. So, as I said, kind of rule of thumb, half a litre every hour.
Okay.
Is a pretty good amount. And even if you don't want to drink it, force yourself to drink it, because it forces that water to keep on coming through. So don't try to not drink on the flight. And if you need to drink more than that, that's probably half a litre an hour is quite a lot. If you fall asleep for a couple of hours, try to not make up the whole amount, because to try to drink like a litre and a half, it might be a little bit hard. But if you're thirsty, do it, because sometimes flying does make you thirsty. Do have an electrolyte as well. Like, even because now there's like sugar-free Gatorade and stuff like that. Having electrolytes, probably like 2 Gatorades on a 12 to 15 hour flight is a pretty good gauge for that. That's something an air stewardess told me. She said that they always drink electrolytes, and that prevents them from, 1, getting jet lag, and 2, from getting water retention and too much dehydration and that. So that was interesting.
Have you ever I can't remember what it's called, the actual brand, but there's like a really expensive water you can buy at most airports.
Evian?
Yeah, possibly. I don't know.
Evian?
No. That's too cheap. It's like a $40 drink of electrolyte.
Oh, no, I have never tried it. Yeah. And I don't think I've needed to, but it's
probably not much different from a Powerade, right? Or a Gatorade.
Probably not. Yeah. It's probably just, pitched at that idea as to like, oh, this is going to make you not feel jet lagged or something at the other end. But no, just a good old Gatorade will do the trick there. Yeah. So that's with your water. Now with your food, the key thing that I used to always think about was I need to get my meals into the time zone of where I'm going. Mm-hmm. And that can sometimes be the hardest thing, like, flipping your routine around and knowing how much to eat on the flight and getting it so that when you hit the ground wherever that you're going, that you can fall straight back into your routine. Because again, I talk about routine and how important that is. So I would always look at from leaving my home, and that would include, time getting to the airport, waiting at the airport, flight time, assume, a couple of hours before you checked into your hotel at the other end. I would look at that total amount of time and look at my food for a 24-hour period. And then say, for example, if I'm going to arrive in there at night time, I would have to make that decision. Is it going to be too late to get food? Am I going to have to try to work that into my meal time and then wake up the next morning and start my day as if it was like a new day? Or am I getting in there in the middle of the day, and like how many meals am I going to be having in local soil, and how many calories would I normally have consumed during that period that I'm traveling? So it's a little bit, again, it's a lot of planning, but I would always make sure that I had that, because I didn't want to overeat, I didn't want to undereat. And I obviously factor in the fact that, for that amount of time, I'm going to be not burning a lot of calories. So I would do that. And also the fact that on a flight, you tend to get hungry and bored. So I would work out total of what I needed for that period of time, and then split it up so that every 3 hours I would be eating. So if I was on a flight for, say, that was like 18 hours from start to finish, and I'd kind of make sure I had, say, 6 meals, so that every 3 hours I was able to have something, and I would virtually make those meals almost identical in size, so that I'd just be constantly drip feeding my body with food. And then when I'd get to wherever I was going, I would figure out if I was, what I had to do once I got there. Like if I was getting there at night, okay, I can go to sleep. Next morning, wake up, and I make sure I would always have my first meal that I knew what I had, and then from there I can go and start to forage for food and find out what I can get. So yeah, some of the things that I would do, I would take little bags of oats and protein powder that I can easily get water in a cup and just mix that on the plane. I would take little sachets of tuna, rice cakes. Don't ever take cooked food on a plane.
Mm-hmm.
I think, you could maybe do that for one meal, but you're asking for food poisoning.
Right.
And I've seen, again, that's something I've seen so many times where people they underestimate how quickly bacteria can grow, and they'll be like, oh, but the meal was only 6 hours old and I ate it, and then why did this happen? Because it's, once you've got all of the heat in the plane and everything, things kind of grow really quickly, and that's the last thing that you want when you're traveling is to get diarrhea on a plane, and also when you're traveling for a competition, it's the last thing that you want. So
got to take your Imodium with you.
Yes, you do, but you don't even want to be in that position in the first place.
No, you don't.
So don't risk it. And it almost, to me, it seems like food just goes off quicker on an airplane than than anywhere else. So yeah, and again, this is something that I see so much in America. People traveling with full on steak and everything, and then they're having to throw it out because the rice has gone off or something bad like that. So try to take stuff that you can either hydrate on the plane,
mm-hmm.
or you don't need to cook it, or it's the tuna sachets or little tins of tuna. And I know some people don't like that, but it's hey, it's a couple of meals, and it's something that will make a huge difference, is to be able to feed your body still right amount of protein and carbs, and get you to the other end and get you into that new time zone, because that's the key, is to get yourself into that new time zone. You want to be able to try to get a flight that gets you in, later in the evening to wherever it is that you're going, mm-hmm. so you literally can, pretty much go to bed once you get there, and then wake up ready to go the next day, and you hit the ground running. And obviously, before you've travelled there, you're going to have looked up where the nearest gym is to your hotel. You've probably checked out what facilities the hotel has, whether you're going to be able to get food that you want at the hotel, whether you're going to have to go travel. Again, if you're traveling to America, it's very easy to get food. You obviously need to think about how you're going to cook that food, remembering that there's different power in America. So you maybe you've got to go first find yourself a cooking utensil. No, not even an adapter, Ash, because in America the power is 110 and we use 220.
Right. So
you're going to pretty much you're even with an adapter, other than electronics and laptops and all that kind of stuff. But if you try to run a rice cooker or something in America, there's not enough power. And conversely, if you bought an American one and tried to use it here, you'll pretty much blow the electrics.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Good tip.
So it's all of those little things with the internet, it's so easy because you can look all of this stuff up. I've even done click and collect, or, had stuff delivered to my hotel room, knowing what day I'm going to arrive, and just order a rice cooker with American power, and they're $40 and stuff like that. And another tip is, in America, they charge you $12 a night or something to hire a microwave, because they're not standard in a lot of the rooms. And you can go to their Walmart and buy a microwave for $40. So if you're there for a week, it's way cheaper to just buy a microwave and leave it in the room afterwards, or give it to someone, give it to another competitor. Yeah. So yeah, and you're thinking it's a whole microwave, but $40, and that's in 4 days you've already spent that, and it's probably better than the one they would have given you in the hotel room. So it's just little things like that, where, if you're traveling within the Western world, it's quite easy. Funny story, when I went to my first World Championship in Greece, in Athens in 1997, and got to the hotel, and I didn't think of any of these things. I just thought, I'll be able to get what I need at the hotel, and I'll be able to heat stuff up, I'll be able to cook rice and that. And they actually didn't have a microwave, not even in the kitchen of the hotel in Athens. Wow. There was, this is traditional. And I asked for boiled chicken, because my friend had told me how to ask for boiled chicken in Greek. And they literally served me a bowl of boiled chicken in the water, still sitting in the water that they had boiled it in.
Nice.
But hey, it was boiled chicken. But it's things like that we Australia is very advanced in what we have access to, and you just don't assume that every country is going to have the same thing as you. But not looking up what plugs that they do use, so you do have the right adapters for that country, so that you can run your basic things like your laptops and any normally hair dryers and heating. A lot of those kind of things are now universal. But if you're something more aggressive, like a grill or a rice cooker or something like that, you need to have the right one for the right place that you're going. But if you have something like that, you can normally steam chicken, you can cook rice, you can do a lot of stuff, and do all that in the hotel room.
I never thought this conversation would get into electronics and things like that. But
there's a lot to consider. But that's
it's
the thing.
Preparation, isn't it?
It's preparation. You don't because the last thing that you want is anything that stresses you out close to a competition. So if you're running around trying to just get the food that you want, that's going to be taking away your focus from the things that you need to do in the last week, because obviously peak week's all different. You're probably depleting at some point, so your energy is going to be low. And again, that's another reason why you want to get in that week early, because normally Monday or Tuesday, Wednesday, you're starting to be through a depletion phase. So you kind of want to get there in enough time that you've got yourself settled so that when you hit that part of your preparation, you're not running around like crazy trying to find where you're going to get this or where you're going to train. Like all of that can be planned beforehand. And as I said, the internet these days makes it so easy because you can jump online from anywhere in the world and ask about information for something or book something or make sure you've got all of those things booked and planned. So that's to say, it just when you're when you're prepping for a competition, start that type of preparation as far out as possible. Again, so you're not leaving it till the last minute when you're stressed out and everything, because traveling then then you can just kind of enjoy the process, enjoy where you are, and then book, if you've got the luxury, again, book for a couple of days after so that you can actually enjoy it.
So that preparation sort of makes me feel as if it's almost, how people visualize their success as well. I mean, that's almost part of that process, isn't it?
Well, yeah, because you have to kind of think, how is my week going to go? I mean, and that, again, I don't know what everybody else does, but that's certainly how I do. I always think about, okay, where am I going to be? How far is it to the venue? How far is it to the gym? Am I going to and again, now with Uber, it's very easy. But, again, in the old days, how am I going to get to the gym? Am I going to have to pay for a taxi? How do I call a taxi? Like all of those kind of things that, you take for granted when you have a car. Or are you going to hire a car? That's another thing. Like, I'm the queen of convenience, so I always hire a car wherever I go because I just don't like being stranded and not being able to do stuff for myself or having to wait on something. So I'll hire a car, but I'll always, just basically be organised. But like I say, I already know which gym I'm going to be training at, and I know where the 3 nearest supermarkets are, and just I start to think about, what do I need to take? Okay, I like this particular brand of rice, so I have my rice cooker, but I still want to use my brand of rice rather than have to buy a different brand, for example, or as much stuff as I can that's very specific to my preparation, that I want to make sure I have the right thing and it's able to travel. Take it with you, obviously fresh meat and stuff like that, you're going to buy it over there. As much as what you possibly can, take with you when you're traveling. Again, and this is probably more important even for the women, but take your makeup, take your costume, take your music. Make sure you have all of that in your carry-on and don't ever put it in your suitcase, because inevitably one time or another in international travel, you're going to end up somewhere and your suitcase is going to end up somewhere else. And again, you don't want that stress of, just say they lose it. What if it comes later? So anything that you absolutely critically need to have to get on stage. So obviously I would say that you need your posing suit and you need your music. If nothing else, make sure that that's with you. Obviously your makeup, it just can get very expensive if that doesn't turn up, because you're going to go rebuy everything, and you'll be able to find that, but can you find exactly what you want, or maybe getting your hair and makeup done, but still it's something that the things that you absolutely must have. If you need a certain outfit to sleep in, or you need something that makes your prep go smoother, then make sure you have that, so that you're not in that position of panicking because you don't know where to find it or can't find it, or you have to spend more money than what you expect to spend. So like I say, it's a little bit of planning and having. But that goes for whether you're traveling, interstate as well. Same thing. Always have the critical things within your carry-on, and allowing yourself enough time and looking at, how long things take. Because again, if you're staying at a hotel and you think it's close to the venue, but then you realise that maybe like Google at the peak time that you'll be going, because maybe there's really hideous traffic. Like again, particularly if you're in America, I know people who've done competitions, and the hotel, like the host hotel that they've recommended that you stay at, looks like it's very close to the venue, but understanding LA traffic, it's not that convenient to kind of go back and forth between the two. So sometimes, you maybe book at the non-host hotel because it's actually more convenient, or a lot of the times they do have the luxury of them being connected buildings where it's, easy just to walk across a bridge thing and you're at that thing. But, that's the same when you're actually going backstage to compete. You've got to have your bag. Got to have your bag with all your stuff in it, because you don't want to be running back to your hotel room. Even if it seems like it's really close, You don't know, sometimes the schedule gets pulled forward. You think you've got half an hour and it turns out you've got 10 minutes. So when you're going backstage, you think about what do I need to have. Again, make sure you've got, any things that you need for your hair or ornaments. You've got, your special oil if they don't provide that there, your snacks for pumping up, your pump up bands, your special electrolytes for after you come off stage, all of those things. So you've got to have everything, a backup music in case your music fails, because again, for some reason, even though you'll have tested all your CDs or, your little, now I think they take it off of MP3s and everything, but all of that stuff, something will inevitably fail or they'll lose it or something will happen. So you want to always make sure you have like a backup or something.
So what I'm hearing here as a summary is the word preparation, right?
Yes.
But I mean, you must plan this in some form of list and have a tick box for every time you travel sort of thing?
Yeah, I kind of do. Like I will... I guess for my stage bag, I don't anymore because it's, something that I did so often, but that is a really, really good idea for people to be like write down everything that you think that you could possibly need. And then I guess you kind of separate out, because you don't want to have a, blooming, what do you call them? The backpacker's hiking bag kind of bag. You want something that's reasonable to carry, but you do want to think about what is it like, and it can be stupid things like bobby pins, and it can, or safety pins because something because your bikini decides it's going to do something crazy and you realize that you need to sort of pin it somewhere that you didn't think you had to pin it. But you got to think about what could possibly go wrong, and what do I absolutely need to get myself on stage. Like anything else is almost like it's non-essential, but could I get on stage without this or something?
So I use Evernote, for example, because you can create little check boxes in it, and every time I travel I just know there's something that I'll forget. So if I don't go through that list every single time, then I will forget it, but that's really good for me. And then of course, as I sort of travel more and more, I start adding things onto it. So I don't know, that works for me. And there's you can have different lists for different kinds of travel. So if you're interstate versus international, things like that.
Yeah, well, so, I would just put it, I would have like a shopping list too. Like once I got there, what do I need to buy?
Yep.
So I'd have a list like that as well. Okay, so because I'm not going to travel with peanut butter and honey and the things that I would maybe pump up on. And I actually did try to travel with honey once to New Zealand and they wouldn't let me in with it.
No.
Coming from Australia.
No. Poisonous things.
That's right. That's right. We'll go kill the New Zealanders with our honey. But yeah, it is those things where you think about what can I get locally? What do I need to buy when I go to the supermarket so that I am prepped and ready to go? Because, again, you assume that what if something happens and you can't get out again? So you try to get all of that stuff like organised as soon as possible so that when it comes, ready for comp time, because then you're going to have like check-in meetings and different things that you have to do. You want to make sure that you have all of that. But yeah, you use Evernote. I even just put normal notes in just the regular notes thing, something that you could just refer to, and I would always have a printed copy of my food, what I wanted to eat for the last week, and I would stick that up on the fridge wherever I was staying. Because again, it's good to have a hard copy, because what if something happens to your phone?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. All right, well, there's a lot of experience in what you've just said, and I'm sure it's very, very useful to a lot of people listening, so thank you very much.
No worries, my pleasure.
Words of wisdom. If you like what you've heard, recognise that these tips, they're free. So show your support by becoming a loyal international protein customer by jumping online, hunt our product down and hit that buy now button. So once again, like, share and subscribe to our podcast so we can continue to bring you these episodes from our one and only Aussie muscle guru, 3 times world champion, Christine Enville.